All right, welcome to today's session, 1 + 1 = 3, how to unify data to create new business value. I'm Chase Thompson, Director of Product Management here at Zylo. I've spent about 4 years at Zylo. I worked in software asset management before that, and I'm very excited to talk to you about bringing together SaaS management data today in Zylo. The journey today will be first a bit of background on the broad business problem that we're talking about here, and a recap of Zylo's overall approach to unifying SaaS management data. These are things you already know, but I want to set the stage before diving into specific ideas and concepts of how Zylo helps you unify data, and I'm going to bring in a few key features to make it as tangible as possible. Then I want to finish by zooming back out because data unification is really a bigger problem than just Zylo. And we increasingly play a role as SaaS managers, IT, and procurement in the broader solution and tactics involved in enterprise data unification. So let's take a quick look at the challenges we're talking about today. Fragmented data, right? Take a moment to read this. 25% overspending, originating from a failure to centralize visibility on your SaaS. You can optimize what you see and what's in front of you, but if you're not actually seeing the bigger picture, you're missing quite a lot. So we've established a business problem here related to fragmented data. And of course, this is not unique just to SaaS management, but that's what we're focusing on today. So let's get a little bit more specific on SaaS management and fragmented data in SaaS management. That broad business problem, when you take it and apply it to SaaS management, it can create some challenges. When we lack complete centralized data, we miss things. We decrease value creation. We miss compliance risks. We rush through renewals, probably something we're all familiar with. And we fail to optimize during times of growth and during times of pulling back on cost. Employee experience might even suffer, and we're ultimately left coming up a little short on quality and accuracy in things like budgeting and forecasting. So we've got a number of problems here that are really being derived from fragmented data and the inability to unify SaaS data. So let's talk about what Zylo does in a broad sense first to unify your SaaS management data. I'm going to take 3 tangible examples after this, so bear with me while we kind of set the foundation. Our first key data point in Zylo to start our unification journey is really spend data. We run your spend data from AP, employee expense, reseller data against our industry-leading AI-powered Zybrary, which has about 22,000 applications these days. It's seen a tremendous amount of spend data to understand how to classify your SaaS from that spend data. And the result is a clean and broad foundation to build on top of your inventory. So your inventory is really all of your applications and all of the categorization that comes with that, and details about your AP spend, your employee expenses, and even security data, right? So now we've got this foundation where Zylo is discovering, classifying your applications continuously from spend data, and that's at the core of Zylo, and everything gets built up and around this centralized inventory. Now, if you've been in our app lately, a little detour, you know that we just delivered an overhauled UX, and alongside that, introduced 3 key solutions: inventory management, license management, and renewal management. So we just covered that foundation, inventory. Next, we have license and renewal management. These are powered by usage data and contract data, respectively. For license management, we have usage data from direct integrations, Usage Connect, your SSO integrations, even our import API. Renewal management is powered by contract data, which is really containing that critical information like SKUs, unit costs, renewal dates, and much more. We're going to dive into those details. With these three key solutions, we have a complete picture of the most important data for SaaS management and can really drive forward the value creation activities that we're all responsible for in SAM and IT and procurement and as SaaS managers. And even security and finance need to work off of this data set. So what, right? I've painted a pretty broad picture here. What can we actually do with this in Zylo? So let's get a little bit more specific on how Zylo helps you unify your SaaS management data. With that background, here are a few key examples for you to consider. You got renewals, reclamation, and showbacks. These are three key business processes and activities that you're probably constantly working on or know you should be, and they have huge opportunity for value creation in each one of them. What's challenging about each of them, though, is that they really require bringing together several distinct data sources that do not live together anywhere else to create that value. So for renewals, you need to bring together application data, contract data, usage data, arguably more, to really drive the most optimization out of renewals. For license reclamation, you need to understand your licenses, your users, and be able to run workflows on top of that data, actionable, up-to-date data at all times. Showbacks or chargebacks really require you to bring together payment data, contract data, usage data, even HR data that's often never combined, but you really need to have all that together to drive accurate showbacks. So I'm going to walk through each of these in a lot more detail. I do need to point out a little disclaimer that some of what you will see here is unreleased or in progress of being built and released. So you've got a bit of a mix here of what's possible today and what we're really excited to bring you soon. So let's start with renewals. Effective renewals unify at least two data sources, right? The applications and the contracts that are being renewed. Ideally, you're bringing in even more data to optimize, maybe drive some savings on those renewals, like usage data, perhaps security info, custom fields from your system of record, and so on. So now we've got this complete picture in the abstract. Let's make it actually tangible here and dive into cloud, our demo environment. We're going to be looking at some example data today relevant to renewals. So here I'm going into our renewal management solution, and we've got, first of all, a brand new release, our contract renewal calendar. This renewal calendar shows you your upcoming contract renewals. It's really awesome for taking a quick glance at what's coming up over a longer time horizon. And what's really neat about it is that you can actually filter straight from the calendar. So everything you're seeing here is interactive. These quarterly buttons, these monthly buttons, even down to the day. If I wanted to check out what is happening on May 12th, I've got 4 contracts for about $1 million coming up for renewal. I can select that and immediately see the details underneath that. So a great new way to filter your renewal calendar view, understand what's coming up at a glance, and even look ahead for some time that might be lighter on renewals, right? Time to take a break and relax and look out further into the future and get ahead on your work. Now, contracts themselves, to talk about data again, are really their own entity in Zylo. They're discrete from an application because each contains its own information and relevance to your renewal process. So I'm going to look at this Salesforce contract. Contracts have a tremendous amount of detail within them. We've got some of the summary information here, but within a contract and relevant to SaaS management, you need to understand those line items that make up that contract. And the reason line items are really key is that is where the connection, right, the unification to your application data actually takes place. So on the Salesforce contract, we've got line items with Salesforce applications. I'm going to step back into this view and show you now within the Salesforce contract, apps that are associated, and we've got this across all our contracts. The related app is where we bring data together. And a feature that came out in the last few months, you may or may not have seen this. Anytime you've got an application, this sort of purple emphasis on it, you can actually open the application straight from that view and jump immediately to your app overview. The app overview is extremely powerful unification of data. We've got payment data, we've got payment trend data, we have a very clear and actionable insight for inactive users. We've got our security data here, license trend and usage over time, and even a breakdown of user activity by department. And really, you can treat this like a renewal dossier. This is one page for everything you need to action on, create value in your renewal process. So for the complete picture, we've shown that we have both contract data and application data readily available on your renewal calendar. Furthermore, on the roadmap this year, just to give a little bit of a look ahead, we're going to be working on a combined view of apps and contracts that's even more powerful than what you see today with advanced reporting, so that you can unify all of your app and contract renewal data in a single renewal calendar view. Really an enhancement to this table that you're seeing here now. So we just explored there how we bring together all the data needed to drive value on a renewal. Let's go ahead and jump to our next example. We're going to get increasingly fancy here. We're going to talk about license reclamation next. And really, this could be considered sort of nested within your renewal process. A renewal is a great time to drive reclamation activities around inactive licenses. So to have an effective license reclamation campaign, you need to bring together license data, user data, and the ability to run workflows in real time. Going to jump into another example where we show how we're able to pull together this data. And one of the hardest parts about pulling this together is actually having the knowledge that you're acting on the right license type and the right license name, really at that granular license detail level, and the right people at the right time. So there's a lot that has to come together. I'm going to jump into some of our key platform areas of the product now. We're going to look at our connections. So this is Usage Connect, where you're able to flexibly connect any application to Zylo, build an integration off of some of these applications that you have usage data for and want to run in Zylo. So let's look at Adobe Creative Cloud as an example. With this, we've really unlocked a whole new world of available license information in Zylo. When I look at these connection details, just a couple things to emphasize. We've got a recent connection, right? It's running as of today, it's running as of this past week, April 11th. We've got mapping details that tell us exactly what we've mapped in from Adobe Creative Cloud. And what I really want to focus on is the fact that we are able to bring in a license name. We've got other key data here as well, like email address, first name, last name, and critically, this last activity date. So now what can we actually do with this data? Again, we're going to be able to look at the relevant application that this connection was built on top of, open that up, and we see our app overview page again. And we've got this 34 inactive user insight being generated from that Usage Connect integration. Now I want to take a closer look at that. So I'm going to go into our users tab and see what's going on. So we've got 183 total users, but I can see at a glance here, I've got a number of inactive users really over 90 days, which means I probably want to do some reclamation here. I even have some that are inactive over 60 days. We'll leave those alone for now. I'm going to go into Save Filters to take a look at those specific users that were active over 90 days ago. So now I've loaded that report and I've narrowed this down to 34 users, and I can see they're not active. I can see the license name they have from that Usage Connect integration, their last activity date, whether or not they're in the primary user store, department, and more. So I'd like to go ahead and take action on this data. I'm going to run a workflow. And with a workflow, we can actually interact with those users, ask them if they can return that license, and collect more information about what they might be using it for. So now I've jumped into workflows from that usage data, and I run workflows all the time as an example. So I've got email templates set up, ready to go, In this case, I want to ask for these licenses back. So I've got this return license request workflow template. That's got a good subject line for me. That's got the template built out. This is going to have dynamic fields populating so that the individual users feel like this is a personalized email coming to ask them, hey, it looks like you're not using this license anymore. Could we go ahead and get that back, and ask for them to respond by a given date? Assuming I'm good to go here, I'm not going to send this email today, but I would be able to send that email. And from there, those users would get that email, respond accordingly, and I'd be able to ultimately take their responses and download the results and reclaim those licenses, ultimately driving savings, and ideally driving savings at time of renewal. So there we just showed how we can take data from separate sources like license data, usage data, HR data, and bring that all together to reclaim inactive users in a workflow real time that's reaching out to those users and reclaiming those licenses. Let's go to our last real example before we zoom back out. In my opinion, I think I saved the most exciting for last year. This is a preview of an unreleased feature, cost per user and showbacks, as a reward for hanging out with me here for 20 or 30 minutes. So to set the stage, we know a lot of you are tasked with understanding what is our cost per user. What does it cost us when we hire a new employee? What does it cost us when we hire a new engineer or sales team member specifically? And ultimately, you're trying to understand how to divvy up costs. Maybe it's those centralized IT purchases that get used by the rest of the business. And you need to show from IT or from SAM with finance how that cost is being split up based on actual usage data. This is a really hard problem to solve. So we've got a prototype here to actually show off how we unify contract data, usage data, and HR data like department or cost center to present you with a hyper-specific look at how you might show back costs to the business and ideally drive action around maintaining those costs based on that level of visibility. So let's get in and look at a real example. We're going to be looking at Salesforce again. So here I'm going to license management, and we have this showback page. And now there are two steps to consider as you sort of take in some of this data and what you're seeing. We're going to focus on Salesforce in this case, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're calculating that cost per user. Now, for any of you, your philosophy on calculating cost per user and even app to app or department to department may vary. So we've got the flexibility to support several different ways of determining cost per user and the ability to set it manually. Maybe you have that sort of insider knowledge of what the cost per user should be. Setting a manual cost per user out of the gate is very easy. You're able to do that here. Maybe you know this should be $1,400. You're able to set that. Now let's look at the more complex examples where we're bringing together different data sources. We've got our contract data here because most often cost per user may be defined by a license unit price. We can see from our contract lines that we have almost 3,000 of these licenses, and we have a unit price creeping up on $800 each for those licenses. Now, for me, that may be just that simple. We think of that unit price as the cost per user. Great, we could set that. But we've also got some pretty substantial platform costs here, in addition to maybe some other costs that are driving up our overall annual contract value quite higher than that unit price would suggest, over $4 million. So in that case, I could use something like the annual contract value as well as different usage data from Zylo, provisioned users, active users, maybe all employees if you need to spread it out, and in real time, see what that cost per user would be. So as I switch this to active users, I can see that that cost per user would change. Or if I wanted to spread it out by a much higher number of users, all employees, that changes again. So ultimately, you're able to set this in a number of different ways. Now, to take a simple example, this cost per user is set at $2,000. Now let's get into how we run showback on that. So to show back the cost of Salesforce to the business, we're going to take that cost per user and blend it with HR data on your actual usage data to get a very specific and granular look at what each department is costing based on their fair share of usage. This is a much more granular view than most people are able to achieve on cost per user manually. So in this example, let's take a look. I just sorted here on the total cost by department. And these are departments here. That's how we've configured this to show sales department, services department, all based on your HR data in Zylo. So nothing too surprising, seeing sales, services, customer success as some of the highest paid users of Salesforce licenses. But then I see solutions consultants here, and maybe just as an example, I'm a little surprised to see that we have over 100 paid Salesforce licenses for the solutions consulting team, racking up almost $250,000 in cost of those paid users. But they're not footing the bill at all. And maybe I happen to know that they're not quite that active, or I could go look at the usage data to see their level of activity and verify that. So this is an example of where perhaps based on this data, you're able to see, okay, solutions consulting, I'm going to go talk to the leader of that department, talk about the cost that's being contributed from them, and see if we can use that as an incentive to reduce some of that, the paid users, particularly any inactive paid users. So taking a step back to cost per user, now that we looked at that showback example, we're able to look at cost per user across our entire stack, right? And really understand total cost per user across different sets of apps. Maybe I want to use tags or spend data to understand in my engineering department, what is my total cost per user? All of that's going to be possible here in the showback feature. So this is a super high precision pass at showback and chargeback, and we believe it's a great innovation for SAM, IT, and finance to be getting brand new business value out of bringing together contract data, usage data, and HR data. Again, this is not yet available, but we are super excited to share the progress we're making here and make this available to you soon. Now let's take a minute to just conclude by zooming back out. We need to unify our Zylo data across the enterprise. Otherwise, we're just part of the problem, right? So you've centralized and unified your SaaS management data in Zylo. You've got your payment data, your HRIS, your contract data, all streaming into Zylo real time. But this really can't live in a silo either. You need to get this data back into the rest of the business to maximize value creation from unified data. So we're very focused this year on enhancing our connection and API strategy for you. Usage Connect, which I showed in my second example, is a great example of how we're doing that already today. We're making it easier than ever to get data into Zylo, but also get it back out into those connected key enterprise systems. So with connections to things like procure-to-pay systems, your CMDBs for IT, data warehouses, BI tools, contract data, and more, we're really focused on unlocking enterprise value from your SaaS management data. With that, I'd like to thank you for joining me today and taking a look at how you can create new business value in Zylo by unifying your SaaS management data. Thank you.